Welcome to the Webster World Report, a special program linking Webster University's global operations during the pandemic crisis. And now, here's our host, Rick Rockwell.
Welcome to our fourth special program examining the coronavirus pandemic. As the entire Webster system works remotely worldwide, we're hoping you're finding a value to our global conversations. This week, an international relations expert in Vienna tells us how global politics is shifting due to the pandemic. We'll visit with the director of one of our military campuses in San Antonio, and we'll have the second part of our conversation with Webster's campus in Ghana. But first, let's hear from newscaster Tierra Gray.
Students are doing their best to adjust to the completely online environment due to the pandemic, and the Online Learning Center in Webster Groves is always a help. But what if you're many time zones away in a place where online learning is relatively new? Well, if you're in Ghana, you can turn to success coach Eli Tetteh.
I was on a call just yesterday speaking with a student who was having had not submitted a number of assignments and was lagging behind in a class. And she was just explaining that, she had kind of had a number of panic attacks and really had, I guess, shut down personally. And so she really needed just somebody to kind of walk her through the process of uploading things and making sure that she got all her work in okay.
Success coaches like Eli in Ghana, contacts at the Online Learning Center, faculty, advisors, and other staff and administrators are all ready and willing to help students navigate online learning. Speaking of support for students, a variety of other offices have stepped up their efforts to offer outreach, including Webster's Vet Success on Campus, or VSOC program. Jason Blakemore, Webster's VSOC counselor, is now holding virtual sessions with students via Zoom. The sessions are running every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Daylight Time, now through May 20th. Veterans, service members, or anyone with questions about Veterans Affairs issues may attend. See Webster Today for more details, or seek out Jason Blakemore on the university's website for more information. Webster University's Confucius Institute is offering free virtual Tai Chi classes twice a week. Violet Lee teaches the classes via Zoom. Lee is internationally known for her writings on Tai Chi and has taught thousands of people these techniques that reduce stress and anxiety. The classes are held Tuesdays and Thursdays at 12:40 p.m. Central Daylight Time through May 12th. Registration information can be found in Webster Today or on the university's website. Earth Day may have already slipped past us this week, but you can still celebrate. One way might be through watching the new documentary called Earth. It's the latest film that's part of the Webster film series. Here's a short excerpt.
When a girl at a bar asks you what you do and you look at her and you can honestly tell her right in the eye that I move mountains for a living, she questions that. But it's true. That's what we do.
This documentary was created by Austrian filmmaker Nicholas Geyer-Halter, and it's available to anyone worldwide through the film series for a rental fee of $12. The film is available to rent through April 30th. For more information, check out Webster Today or the Webster Film Series webpage. What better way to spend some of your time at home during the pandemic? For the Webster World Report, I'm Tierra Gray.
Thanks, Tierra. First this week, a shout out to our listeners in Uzbekistan. Webster has various programs in Uzbekistan, with our operations centered in Tashkent, the second largest campus behind only our operations in St. Louis. Most of our listeners are in the United States, but our Uzbek listeners make up a significant portion of our global audience, second only to those listening in the U.S. So thanks to all who are listening in Uzbekistan and elsewhere around the globe. And now we return to Vienna. We wanted to gain perspective on how the global order is shifting due to the pandemic. So we sought out the expertise of Professor Franco Algieri, the chair of the International Relations Department at Webster Private University Vienna. He joined us via Skype from Baden, Austria.
The only thing which I can say for sure is that, and this is unprecedented in our analysis in international relations, that this is a case and a situation with the most unknowns we've ever seen. And also, if you look at questions like, what will the future bring? What will be the new normal? This is one of the phrases which you can hear very often, the new normal. So what is it? We don't know. We have absolutely no idea. So it's a lot about guessing. It's a lot about maybe also wishful thinking, what we would like the world to look like or how to get out of this crisis. But we have to realize that it is not that we were kind of shocked that suddenly we have such a pandemic, because in different scenarios of different institutions, pandemics always have been there. And it was always clear that pandemics will hit not only regions or countries, but can hit the globe. Now we have it. What we can see and what we learn as one of the first lessons here is that crisis management still has to learn a lot. So we knew that it would affect us in general, that it could hit us hard, but we had no experience. We never had a test case like this. SARS was something different because SARS was more or less kind of I would call it regionally comprised problem, and now we have it on a global level. And then we can see how different governments are acting. We can learn about coordination that is working or not working. We can see reactions from different political actors, political parties, some of them trying to be very sober, pragmatic, others are trying to be more populist, and so on. So what we can learn is that and this is one of the lessons I would say we can also have for the future, is that we have to learn from that crisis how to better cooperate in the future, how to learn from the assessment here, and also we have to find out how can crisis management be improved on a global level.
So from your view in Central Europe, I'm very curious about how you see the United States, how you see Europe, and how you see China now. The U.S. economy is being buffeted in very historic ways, in very negative ways. We see the Chinese with military maneuvers, naval maneuvers off of Taiwan. We see parts of Europe very much hurt by this pandemic. So what does that look like? What does that transatlantic relationship look like post-pandemic in your view? What signals are we getting? And maybe what does the U.S. relationship with China, that Sino-American relationship, look like?
Okay, so let's start with the transatlantic relationship, which you have been talking about. Well, the transatlantic relationship has seen its ups and downs. And I would say since the end of the Cold War, I'm somebody who is always trying to find out what is it actually, what is the essence of the transatlantic relationships, especially when we see that the world became more multilateral. And is it only security policy? Is it only NATO? Is this a transatlantic relationship? No, it's of course much more. It's about politics, it's about shared values and so on. But all these things are, I would say, under a certain stress for quite some time. This is due to the fact that some of the governments in Europe are rather hesitant with respect to commitments in a transatlantic context. Other governments want to kind of stick to what I call at times, image of transatlantic relations of the old days, where you can ask, but how can you transform that to today? Because in such a relationship, you always need two to tango. And you have to have a kind of shared vision, and you need something which is kind of a shared interest. And for me, it's really hard to define what is, in these days, not only with the pandemic, but in general over the last couple of years, the shared image, the shared vision of transatlantic actors on both sides of the Atlantic. And here we can see that there are lots of divisions, be it different administrations in the United States who are approaching the transatlantic relationship differently, be it that within the European Union, for example, you have different actors who are more transatlanticists, others who are trying to be here more hesitant and trying to define more a European path. So this kind of common denominator, this common idea that we should work together because there's this one obvious threat which ties us together, is no longer given. Now the question is the pandemic now the common threat? Can this tie us together and form a new transatlantic relationship? And here I would be rather hesitant because I would not compare it to the threat of the Cold War, what we see here. Because here it needs more than a transatlantic relationship. And this brings me now to your issue with China and other actors in the world. Because here it's not enough if the Europeans and Americans would work together quite well and would say, well, okay, we try to have here a common interest because this is something which cannot be solved on a transatlantic issue. This means that we have to solve it in a more multilateral global context. Now, the question is, what about the other actors? You mentioned China. I would say Asia in general. What about Asian actors in general? What about actors in other parts of the world? What about Africa? What about South America? These parts of the world which have been always kind of considered as left out of this new constellation in international relations where we did not know, is it now going to be a bipolar world, a Chinese-US world? Will it be, again, a transatlantic world? Is it the Western value-oriented world which is under stress, or is it a new kind of world order that is coming up? And also in the literature, and brilliant people have been always talking about it and saying, well, we know that something is transforming, but we did actually not know what it will look like in the future. And the same we can see here, that the pandemic, of course, at least I would say, tells us, yes, we would need to work together, going into a kind of, I would say, kind of stress reaction, and now to find the one who's guilty, or to put the blame on the other one, or just to think of the own country or the own region would, in my view, be the biggest mistake that we can do. So I would say it can be something where the European Union, the US, and China, they all would actually, from a rational perspective, be forced now to join forces and to work better, more closely. I see the problem that be it the US, be it Europe, and be it China, all of them are under their own specific stress tests. You can see it in China with the economy, which is, even though the production starts in Wuhan again, but it does not mean that the Chinese economy will naturally go back to square one. We can see it in the United States, we can see it in Europe. And the one thing which we also learn about in this situation is there is no reset button. We simply cannot just say, okay, here's the reset button. Okay, the pandemic is over, the crisis is over, and then we just continue where we stopped before the crisis. This is not the case. So this will mean, and because it's also a kind of asymmetric development, even though maybe in China the production goes up, well, but what about the markets, the US and Europe, where the production is down? And then if the production goes up here again, maybe we will have a second wave somewhere in Asia of the virus. So now all these things which we do not know. Now, you also referred to this issue about tensions in the Taiwan Strait. Yes, this is something which we have for decades now and which is coming back and forth. And this is also a very typical reaction to say, okay, we might now look a little bit more at the foreign policy side and the military side and trying to promote here certain images of strength to deviate from other problems which we have. This is a very classical pattern. I would at the moment not assume that this is leading to a clash between Taiwan and China, and also not to a clash between the United States and China, because I assume that even on both sides of the Pacific, the rational actors are still considering the potential costs of such a conflict and are shying away from those costs. I would not exclude it completely in the future. And this is depending on how internal developments in different countries are happening, and also in China, how the internal development will continue.
Thank you so much. Professor Franco Algieri, the chair of the International Relations Department at Webster Private University Vienna, joining us on the Webster World Report today via Skype from Baden, Austria. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick.
Coming up, we complete our conversation with Webster's campus in Africa, and we'll visit with the director at one of our locations in San Antonio, Texas. More from the Webster World Report in a moment.
Here's a basic tip for making our Webster community stronger during this extraordinary time of working from home. Please read your Webster email. It's a simple way to stay connected. For students, please open and read Webster Weekly, the e-newsletter sent by the Office of Student Affairs, or the newsletters from campus leaders sent from our international campuses. For staff and faculty, please touch base with Webster today. Reading your email and checking those newsletters will help us all stay connected. Read and connect to make our community stronger.
Webster University is recognized as a global leader in undergraduate and graduate education. As a pioneer in online learning since 1999, Webster was well positioned to quickly convert all offerings to online formats during the current COVID-19 crisis. Our priority is to guide our students to the successful completion of their educational journey, and online is a great vehicle to do so. At Webster, online is not just one format. There are a variety of platforms faculty can use to flexibly reach students, depending on the needs of the course. To learn how Webster can ensure you a high-quality learning experience, visit webster.edu/OLC.
Welcome back to the Webster World Report. Last week, we began a rich conversation with Awoyaa Mensah, the Director of Marketing and Corporate Partnerships for Webster University Ghana. Here's the second part of our interview as Awoyaa spoke about how the Ghanaian people are coping with the crisis. She joined us via Skype from Accra.
I think there's some positive strides being made, but it's tough in a developing country where the majority, are illiterate. And so you have to think, great message from the president, immediately he's done. The folks have to get to working to translating that in several languages. I mean, Ghana has probably close to 100 languages, if not more. So there's a disconnect, and some things don't translate, right? So you just have to kind of try to make someone understand, what is a virus and what does that mean? So you just simplify it to, wash your hands and stay away from people. So I think generally, there is an unease for the working class who really just want to be out there. I would say now in the third week, I feel like maybe people are obeying more versus the first 2 weeks, which was more of a struggle. Because again, for everybody, I think it's a slower realization to how serious this is globally, and so the police is out there enforcing. The few times that I had to step out, I get to a police barrier. They ask me where I'm going, and I say I'm going to the grocery store. So they're out there trying to enforce as well. And, as typical, there's some people who are still breaking the rules, right? I think for Easter, some folks went out to the beach still because they don't get it, I guess, or they don't see the severity of it. So it is a concerning situation, but personally, I'm hopeful. I think if we all just follow the rules, especially the social distancing, that we can come out of this hopefully in a few months. I don't think that we're at the very ends of this. I still think, unfortunately, that we're in the middle, if not still in the beginnings of it. But we can just kind of keep hopeful, do the best that we can do. I've gone out and bought a mask in African print, of course. Now we have it in African print all over Accra in beautiful colors and patterns and designs. And to be honest, even if that's, you don't really get it, but you think it's a fashion statement, I'm still happy for you to do it, because it still helps the next person. And so I think I'm hopeful, and I think Ghana's on the right path. Hopefully we start to see the numbers taper, or as they say, you have to kind of hit the peak, and hopefully we hit that and we don't get into thousands and thousands, because we really cannot handle it on this side of the globe. The hospitals, the clinics, etc., we just would not be able to handle very large numbers of cases.
I wonder if you have any messages for others in the Webster system globally.
It's just beautiful that Webster is a global family. At the Ghana campus, we always refer to ourselves as a family. You all may have seen he's got the whole world challenge. We did one of those social media challenges, and I think some of these we do for fun, but just to also remind ourselves that we're not alone and that we have this wonderful global family. Even here in Accra, some of us are American, Ghanaians, you have folks from the French countries, and you know, some have gone back home, but it's just really great to feel like we're a part of something larger. You know, just to continue to work hard, work within some kind of structure. Working from home can be a challenge. It's also a learning curve for many people. So if you haven't already, create a structure. My team, for instance, we always have Monday morning meetings in the office. We've kept that, you know, now it's on the phone versus in my office. On Fridays, we usually have a weekly close. And that for me is really more just a little bit informal to check in with them and how they're doing. And now we do that over video. And so I just say that we continue to pull together. Doing this online is not ideal, even though it's amazing that, you know, Webster being a leader in online education, we're kind of showing that strength now. And that is important to each of us and our students, and being able to not have disrupted education. But again, for me in marketing, to be able to say that to perspective, that with us, you know, there isn't a huge change here. We have world classroom, faculty is still dedicated, uploading their notes and videos, and we should be really proud that we are part of an institution that can handle this pandemic. So I would just say, let's keep hopeful and stay safe, stay at home, and stay in touch as well.
Thank you so much. Awoyaa Mensah, Director of Marketing and Corporate Partnerships for Webster University Ghana, joining us via Skype from Accra on the Webster World Report. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And now our visit to San Antonio. Dr. Ruben Molina is the director of our location at Randolph Air Force Base, one of 4 locations in San Antonio for Webster. He joined us via Cisco WebEx from San Antonio.
You know, for several years, we have been very deliberate in telling students and prospects the same thing. And what we tell them is, do not allow yourself to complete your graduate program in the year 2018, 2017, 2020, and earn a master's degree without ever having experienced an online course. So they've been doing that. And with greater and greater frequency, they're doing that. And in the past few years, as you know, Rick, we've invested a great deal in this technology called WebNet Plus. You know, we resisted it like everybody else. Our faculty resisted, our students resisted. We were somewhat skeptical, but, you know, we rolled up our sleeves, we put the equipment in place, and, you know, today we have high-speed fiber optic cables going into each of our 3 assigned classrooms on a military installation. And they're assigning those classrooms to us, Rick. So our partners on this Air Force base were very generous to give us those classrooms that we could then retrofit this way with the high-speed optical scanning capability, wireless access ports. We began offering I remember in one entire 9-week term, there was 1 WebNet class. Today, there isn't a WebNet class that we aren't doing every day of the week. And so when you ask how our students are doing, how our faculty is doing, how our staff and partners are doing, it was as though, Rick, we were planning for today. It was as though the things that we've been putting in place, the making sure that students were grounded in the online world classroom functionality, that they were grounded in the use of technology, prepared us all for this moment. In fact, I'll share a story with you, Rick, that in the week we were closing out and ready to come home. In the week we were organizing what we thought we needed to bring home with us. Guess what our Air Force partners were doing? They were putting new monitors in each of our 3 classrooms so that each of them had not 1, but 2 and 3 monitors in those classrooms to enhance and facilitate our use of WebNet Plus and similar technologies. They weren't packing up and going home. They were making sure that our classrooms upon our return were better equipped and had better tools, better screens, better monitors, et cetera, et cetera. And, they kind of challenged Webster, what do you guys think we need to do in these 3 classrooms? Well, a couple of other schools, Rick, had already painted a wall with their school accent colors. And so Bert and I rolled up our sleeves, went to Home Depot, got a couple of cans of paint, and painted the walls, because once they took the old equipment down, there was a need to patch some stuff up, and it didn't look quite as nicely. So we patched everything, we painted everything, and they came right in back of us with their new monitors, with their new equipment to put them on the walls. And so, again, it was like we're preparing for this. It was like through a series of actions that we kind of took because we knew they were important to take, eased the transition to shut down. So we've been very fortunate. We benefited from their expertise in ops planning and married that up with our expertise specific to COVID-19. And it has really served our students, our faculty, and our partners very well.
You told us some good stories here about our partnership with the Air Force and with the Department of Defense, and of course some things about your students. How are your faculty and staff coping with what's going on, this remote operations?
The remote operation, as I said earlier, has been made almost effortless. I haven't had a single faculty teaching online or a single faculty member teaching on WebNet Plus. I've not had one instructor, one student, one question, Rick, about how all of that was managed. Why? Because we've done it before. They taught a previous WebNet Plus class. They took our online courses because we encourage them to take online courses and be knowledgeable in the use of all platforms, all modalities within the Webster toolbox. So there's not been a problem, Rick, technical or otherwise. Now, I did hear from one faculty member, and he was, interestingly enough, the same one who said, boy, Webster looks pretty good right now, he said, as it was clear to him that this transition to all online was enabled by actions we took two years earlier. What he hadn't stopped to think about was that he'd never been asked to teach using the same platform he was asking students to use in remote locations. And that, Rick, was very eye-opening. He said, man, I had a much greater appreciation for what they're seeing and for what they're hearing. And the next time, if I'm ever invited to come back to the classroom, I will have a much I'll be much more empathetic and much more patient with my students, because I will have sort of walked the walk from their perspective.
We'll be hearing more from our interview with Dr. Ruben Molina at Randolph Air Force Base on next week's program. Thanks for joining us this week on the Webster World Report. We'd like to incorporate your voices into our program. If you're a student, a staff member, or a member of the faculty, reach out to us. Send us a short audio clip from your cell phone or contact us via email to volunteer to be interviewed on the program. You can find us at covid19@webster.edu. You can also send questions or comments to that email address if you want to interact about the crisis. That address again is covid19@webster.edu. Also, check out the university's COVID-19 resources page at webster.edu/COVID-19. You can also hear our report on KWRH-FM Radio 63119 in Webster Groves, Missouri. The Webster World Report is produced by students, staff, and faculty at Webster University for news reporter Tiara Gray, associate producer Jennifer Gamich, and announcer engineer Jim Singer. I'm Rick Rockwell. Stay healthy and safe.
The Webster World Report is produced by the Global Marketing and Communications Division of Webster University and through the facilities and copyright support of Webster School of Communications. This program is copyright 2020.